a century plus of mathematics education in America. In the 1900s, all of American education was greatly influenced by John Dewey. Dewey was a philosopher, psychologist, and an educational reformer that believed in learning by doing. Apprenticeship models became popular, and Dewey and his followers sought to end academic education with vocational training. In 1920, a group of mathematicians founded the NCTM in an effort to keep the values and interests of mathematics before the educational world. They pushed against apprenticeship models, attempting to justify the study of mathematics for its own sake, and made a plea for algebra for everyone. After a decade or so of NCTM's success, Dewey's protégés tried to reestablish what they called a more practical education, with curriculum based on the needs and interests of students, implying that academicians do not know what is best for children. As the 30s turned to the 40s, Deweyism gained strength and was reinforced based on military recruits being shown unable to do bookkeeping and gunnery. The life adjustment movement repeated the mantra that students weren't being prepared for real life if they focused on academic programs. Instead, American schooling should concentrate on practical problems, leading to the emergence of a two-track educational system. The college versus life tracks became ingrained in education throughout the early to mid-50s, and it wasn't until Russia launched Sputnik in 1957 that the general population realized the importance of math and science instruction in schools. In 1958, the National Defense Education Act committed substantial funding for schools to increase the number of science, math, and foreign language majors, and mathematicians once again were consulted to develop curricula, helping to establish the new math movement. New math was known for its intense formal mathematics, even in the elementary grades. Students were encouraged to take algebra and geometry, and calculus, previously an exclusive college course, was introduced at the high school level. Unfortunately, the new math movement proved unpopular with Americans, with masses of people complaining that their children weren't mastering basic arithmetic. Simultaneously, in the United Kingdom, experimental schools were being developed that took Deweyism to a new level. This progressive movement of the 70s included the establishment of Summerhill, a school headed by A.S. Neal, who believed in complete freedom for students. Here's a short documentary on Summerhill.
Freedom in Summerhill, my school, is doing what you like so long as you don't interfere with somebody else. My father was a village schoolmaster in Scotland, and I spent 12 years teaching in state schools, so I know something about them. So I thought I'd start a school of my own, and this happened in 1921. It's a long time ago. And I started a school then where I said, now children will be free to be themselves. And let me elaborate that, you see. We've tried for generations to teach people how to live by religion, by morals, by politics. And it's been you only look around on the sick world today and you see it hasn't been much of a success. And one thing has never been tried, and that's freedom. So I thought I must have a school where children are free, where their characters are molded, where they're free to live their own lives, without license. Put it concretely, if a boy doesn't want to study mathematics, it's nobody's business. If he wants to play a drum when other people are sleeping or studying, that's everybody's business. That's not allowed. So the first thing about the school was we had the freedom without license. The second thing was that no child in humanity ever has enough play. It's shoved into a school when it's 5 or 7 or whatever it is, sitting at desks and having a small playground. No child has enough play in life. Now, childhood is playhood. So I thought I'll have a school where children will be free to play as long as they like. They can play for 12 years if they want to, knowing quite well that the child gradually would come to associate play with work. But we didn't associate the two together. We didn't try to make play, to use that play for studying mathematics or something like that, which I think is quite unfair. So that's the second point about my school, that the child can play as long as he likes. And to be free, you must be free in all ways, so that we have no compulsory lessons. You don't need to go to lessons in Summerhill. You can stay away for years. No teacher ever says you should go to lessons. Well, I don't want to boast at all, but I think our results in these years have been pretty good. We've had quite a few university lecturers, we've got doctors, lawyers, no teachers. I think we've only had very few people who want to be teachers. I think quite wise, I think. I think teaching is in your roses, but still I'm a teacher. However, they were completely free to do what they liked, to play as long as they wanted. And the result was, when they came to work, they could do in 2 years. You could pass exams in 2 years, where they might have been 5 or 6 years at an ordinary school, cramming stuff they didn't believe in, they didn't like. So that's the 3 points of Summerhill: freedom to be yourself, not molded, freedom to play, and freedom in general. Well, now you can't abolish authority in the community. You must have some law. I mean, some people can't ride on the left and some on the right. So having abolished adult authority, we have a community ruling. We meet on a Saturday night, the youngest and the oldest, everybody, and we make laws. And that's called self-government, and they make quite sensible laws.
I'd not propose. I'd like to ask people to stop throwing milk bottles all around the place after they finish. Take them back to the shop where they bought their milk bottles. Especially Peter Dogan.
Can't we just ask Peter to return the milk bottles to the place where he buys them from? Because they need them, I think.
And I second that. And for all the other people as well, like Freya and Tubby and Johnny, who buy milk from that lady. I don't. You do.
Well, I'm not going to speak about our lessons and things, because we've no new ways of teaching subjects. Mainly, I think, because we don't think it's subjects important enough.
And his days were given to wicked schemes. Wickedly scheming, he would limp and cackle through the cold corridors of the castle, planning new impossible feats for the suitors of Sarah Linda to perform. He didn't wish to give her hand in marriage, since her hand was the only warm hand in the castle.
We don't attach very much importance to academic education. We attach importance to living, being balanced, being free, being charitable, being tolerant. One or two parents grumbled to me that Summerhill makes the children too tolerant. I'm very glad. The biggest compliment I ever had in my life, I think, was a little boy of 7 who came, and he went home for a holiday, and his granny asked him all about the school, and he told him what they played at and so on. And then she said, "Is there anything else to tell you?" He thought for a bit. He says, "Yes, there's a chap called Neil there." I thought that was a very nice compliment. I needn't describe what they do in pottery and art and things like that. You can get that in any school. But what you do get with free children is a tremendous sincerity and the tolerance of other people. You get a lot of charity like that. I can't imagine any old Summers Hill pupil being anti-Semitic or being anti-color or anything like that. Well, that would apply to lots of schools, I know that. And it is a delight to see the effect of freedom on children. I've seen people again and again coming here hard-boiled, hating everybody, and in a few years they were nice, quiet, social people. You see, there's no hope in hate. You can't cure anything by punishment or hate. That's why our criminal code is so barbarous and stupid and unchristian, if you like to call it that way. You can't do it. You can only cure by love. And if a child isn't loved in its cradle, so to speak, it's handicapped its whole life. The worst problems I've ever had were children who weren't loved as babies. And I see no other way of curing humanity by anything but love. It's much more easy for us in school to deal with children than a woman, for example, trying to cook the dinner and 2 or 3 children sprawling about and getting in her way. That's very difficult compared with a school. But generally speaking, too many parents spank their children. Now, I think it's absolutely easy to bring up a child without spanking it at all. After all, if you spank a child, it's being so unfair. You should hit somebody your own size. Take a child who's lying, for example. Now, a free child never lies. It doesn't need to lie. Because children lie because they're afraid. They lie, of course, exaggeration, just as we all do. They see a funeral and they say, "Mother, I've seen 10 funerals today." That's okay. That's a budding novelist or a budding TV person. But still, lying shouldn't come in. If a child lies to you parents, there's something wrong with you. I wrote in one of my books, there isn't such a thing as a problem child, there's only a problem parent. But I qualified that by saying, well, more truly, that there's only a problem humanity. And another thing I object to with grown-ups and parents is obedience. I don't think there should be obedience. If you have obedience, you should have a mutual obedience. I never ask a child to obey me, and a child doesn't ask me to obey him. Why should they? We exploit children, really. We shouldn't do it. I'd like to see schools abolish this idea that all this square root and this rubbish that you never use is education, because it isn't. I want to abolish that altogether. And I want to see teachers becoming really interested in freedom for the child and not imposing their own ideas of morality and all these stupid things about headmasters chucking out boys because they're wearing blue jeans. What sort of people are these? I mean, I want people to be wide and broad in the outlook in dealing with children. It will come, it's coming slowly, but I mean, 30 years ago, things are much worse than they are today. There's much more freedom in state schools today, for example, especially in the infant department. But the future I'd like to see would be, as I said, knocking down all the barrack schools and building bungalow schools in the country. But that's an outward thing. The inward thing is the important thing. To have teachers who believed in child psychology and not in all that bunk about quadratic equations and square roots and things. I've never done a square root in my life, by the way, since I left school. And trained at the training college primarily in psychology, not the wrong psychology. I want dynamic psychology, dealing with behavior problems like stealing or lying or whatever it is. The sex question is one more for the home than the school. I personally believe that people should have a sex life when they want it, when they're ready for it. But you can't practice that in the school, and not in this civilization anyhow. And our attitude to sex is simply, there's nothing sinful about sex, there's nothing evil about it. And that's about all. And we don't give children any ideas that there's to be guilty about sex in any way. I don't know what the future is, but I'd like to see it that way. But the children were completely free to go to lessons or stay away. After all, the lessons matter in life. Are completely free to make their own laws and things like that. I'd like to see that. I don't know if it'll ever come. I want to live long to see. I wish I could. I wish I could live another 50 years or 1,000 years to see it, but I don't think I shall.
As the world moved into the 80s, low scores on standardized tests implied that the United States was a nation at risk, and falling behind their international counterparts. Low enrollments in advanced math and science led to relaxed entrance requirements for college. And in 1980, NCTM released a document, An Agenda for Action, that in some ways called for a national curriculum in mathematics, a curriculum that decreased emphasis on arithmetic and increased emphasis on problem solving across all grade levels. Even after the recommendation of An Agenda for Action, the U.S. continued to struggle with mathematics education, and as the nation ushered in the 90s, NCTM developed a specific plan for improving instruction, the Curriculum and Evaluation Standards, which detailed content for grade levels under the umbrella of 5 goals: to value mathematics, to become confident in their ability to do mathematics, to become mathematical problem solvers, to communicate mathematically, and to reason mathematically. Shortly after the Curriculum and Evaluation Standards, NCTM also released the Professional Standards for Teaching Mathematics, which were designed to help instructors with new approaches to teaching math to help achieve the 5 general goals. Because a national curriculum could not be enforced, states developed frameworks based on NCTM's ideas, and local districts used state models to shape their daily teaching and learning of mathematics. For those who opposed NCTM's imposition into education, a rallying cry for math wars erupted, with a group called Mathematically Correct, formed in 1995. They were attempting to disrupt a standards-based curriculum. The math wars continued through the 90s, with NCTM responding by updating their standards and organizing their ideas into 6 principles: curriculum, teaching, learning, assessment, equity, and technology; 5 content standards: number, measurement, algebra, geometry, and statistics; and 5 process standards: problem solving, reasoning, connections, communication, and representations. And of course, the math wars continued. State graduation exams and teacher licensure exams became the norm, and the U.S. continued to struggle with math achievement. Then, in 2009, the National Governors Association, fraught with complaints about the lack of achievement on improving math instruction, contracted a nonprofit group of educators and researchers to re-examine NCTM's work and to write standards for math and literacy. In 2010, 43 states, the District of Columbia, and 4 territories adopted the Common Core State Standards, which was an attempt to unify education just short of calling for a national curriculum. And that leads us to where we are today. although Common Core has had a bumpy ride, as is shown with this up-to-date report of implementation. In other words, who is on board with Common Core, who never accepted it, which states were rethinking their position, etc. And with that, I bid you farewell.